Hi everybody, for today's video, I'm going to be going over what args are in Python and how to use them. So as a base piece of knowledge, all you really need to know is that args are a tool on your tool belt in Python to allow you to work with functions a little bit easier. And I'll go into that a little bit more later in the video. So let's start off by writing a simple function which will add three numbers. And we'll call that function adder. And we can say our numbers are num1, num2, and num3. And then what we can do is we can have something like an answer variable, and we'll do num1 plus num2 plus num3. And then what we can do is we can just print, go ahead and print the answer. And then I'll call the adder function here. And for num1, let's say I put something like 23. For num2, say I put something like 34. And then num3, say I put something like 57. Then if I were to go ahead and run, it does print the correct answer. And that's pretty nice because I can just have certain number of things that I want to add, can add them together, and I can print the answer. But there are a couple of restrictions. For example, you're not always going to be adding only three numbers together. You may want to be adding more than three. And we can't really control that in Python. We can't give an unlimited number of arguments in Python in a typical sense. But with args, that actually is possible. So for example, I could put in a bunch more numbers and the program wouldn't crash. So if I were to actually go ahead and run this right now, it would actually crash and it would give me a type error. And it would say something like, it only takes three positional arguments. So the function adder takes three positional arguments, but you gave it 8. And it broke. So what args allow you to do is just pass in as many arguments as you want. So the way to use args is by just having an asterisk. So what I'll do is I'll create another function. I'll call this infinite adder. And what you do is you just have an asterisk with a variable name as your argument. And what this tells Python is that you're going to be using args and the variable that you're passing in is data. So let's just go ahead and see what happens when we print data without doing anything to it. And the reason you don't put the asterisk is because data is just like any normal variable. It's just when you are putting it in the function argument list, you need to put the asterisk because what that tells Python is that you're using args. So I'm going to get rid of this line and let's call infinite adder. And let's not pass in anything at first and see what happens. So it just prints an empty pair of brackets. And we don't really know what that means, so let's investigate a little bit further and let's print the data type of data. And let's run this again. And you'll see that what it's giving us is an empty pair of brackets, and it's giving us a class of tuple. And what a tuple is it's very similar to a list, but you can't change the items within it. And what's happening is when we specify that we're using args, it turns our arguments into a tuple. So for example, if I were to add a couple of numbers here, and then try the same thing, you'll notice it's actually giving us a list of the arguments that we passed in as a tuple. So with args, we can pass in as many pieces of data we want without running into any significant issues because Python is just handling that for us. So if I were to run this again, same thing. So how we can kind of modify our previous function is that we can cycle through each element in data and add it up. So we can have like an answer start off at 0. Then for every number in data, we can do something like answer plus equals number. And then we can print our answer. And as you see, it does actually add in the numbers that we specified and we can put in as many arguments as we want. And once again, it adds everything up. So just as a quick recap, with a typical function, you have to specify the number of arguments that you're putting in, and that can be limiting because oftentimes you won't know how many things you want to put into your function. And the way you handle that is by using something called args. And what it allows you to do is pass in as many pieces of information you want, and under the hood, Python is just treating it as a tuple, and you can index the tuple, you can iterate through the tuple, and just deal with your data in a normal way. So in a future video, I will be going over another topic very similar to this called quargs, and stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.